point out, and I have photos to support this, is that hemlocks fill the entire space. There's very little open air in a hemlock.
Okay.
And the way they do this is at the top of the tree, the branches point up the way you have them, except there's no empty space. They fill it. And in the
Okay.
middle of the tree, they point horizontally. And at the bottom of the tree, they sag down. And I have some photos to show that. Now, the spray of leaves is very horizontal, as you have it there. It's
Okay.
very flat. But the angle of the branches changes, and they're dense enough that basically when you're on one side of a hemlock, you can't see through it. They fill everything.
Okay. Gotcha.
Well, John, your hemlocks are much healthier than those here in Fox Chapel then. Mine are kind of
I
scraggly.
didn't hear that. My hemlocks are what?
Are much healthier than the ones in Fox Chapel. The photos I sent to Chris are really kind of scraggly, like Charlie Brown-like. So,
well, okay. So the little hemlocks can be quite scraggly.
right.
By the time they're big, they
Yes.
just fill the whole space they occupy.
Show John your hero tree. That's awesome.
I think I can pull up some
You have it.
photos of that. Let's see. Ivy renders. So I have a looking up view, which is still a little scraggly, but of that.
That's pretty good.
There's actually this updated one.
John, do you recognize that tree?
Is it the one by the big cabin?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's pretty good as far as, sort of occupying all the space. So there's really no light getting through. If you're underneath a hemlock, there's just it's all shadow. There's nothing under there. But
Right.
So maybe a little bit more, like 5% more leaves to block out.
The bark looks pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. So I will
But
pick
you
it
know
up.
what? The bark on a hemlock is more brown than it is gray.
Okay. That's good. I'll make a note of that. All right. So then for a small hemlock, is this a good thickness, or should I thicken that up as well?
For a small one, that's not bad because they're usually, in the shade of some of the other ones and they don't have as much growth.
Awesome.
Yeah, I agree. That's okay for a little one.
Okay. All right. Next tree. The laurel.
That's way too single stemmed.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're a lot more shrubby.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So would
Not so tall.
would more stems come out at this first bend here?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
And the flowers, you need to give the image of them being clustered a bit more.
Okay. So less spread out on a branch.
Right. Sort of bunchy.
Okay.
Much more bunchy than they look there, with gaps where there are no flowers. You think that's right, Bonnie?
Yeah.
So rather than flower, like, so kind of bunch towards the end of the branch and then gaps of just leaves?
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, there's way too many flowers on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have very spectacular flower heads, but most of the tree is still green.
Okay.
It's not like the dogwood where the flowers are very broadly spread across the whole tree.
Right.
They're really bunched together. And it looks to me like you've got 4 or 5 of the separate cups together. You can put a lot more than that together.
Okay. So like 10 or 20?
I think 20 would be too many.
20 is too many, but 10's probably good.
10, yeah.
And then a gap of just leaves. I think the leaves should be a little bit bigger too.
Okay. I'll make a note of that.
I don't know, Bonnie, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah.
Bigger leaves.
Yeah, there's a different structure. This is the first I've seen this. It's a different structure too,
Mhm.
that you almost
Yeah,
have to sit.
As Bonnie said, they're sort of shrubby. I think we
Yeah.
call
There's
it a
no
small
trunk.
tree, but it doesn't really look like a tree. It looks like a shrub.
Right.
Right.
So if you pushed the trunk down into the earth and started where that first
Yeah.
branch
Could
is,
be.
it could
And
be.
I don't think the trunk should be anywhere near that big around.
Yeah,
Okay.
they're
Too big.
so this is a general thing, is that many of your trees taper too dramatically, right? So
Right.
so they need to have a much more gentle taper. And
Okay.
I don't know what that really means as far as building the tree, but for a tree that size, it should probably only be half that thick at the base.
Okay. I'm trying to
The
find
So-
my.
Same's true for a couple of the beeches that are too fat at the bottom for their height.
Okay. That's good to know.
Some beeches are essentially just a straight pole going up.
Right.
Then your dogwoods too are going to be mostly either along the edge of the forest or in the forest where there's less trees, more clearing.
Okay.
So one of the things we should do, this is
Or your
just a
laurel,
general
not
thing, is
laurel,
as we
laurel.
compose the forest, we should have an area that's a clearing where we have some big tree fell down and there's a hole in the forest, and we can put some of these guys like a dogwood
yeah.
or a locust or
Right.
some
Yeah.
cherries right in the hole.
Perfect.
So we're talking about the interaction with the sunlight, Chris, and where that plant needs to grow to get the sun.
So in a break where sun shines through down to the bottom is where. Perfect.
Right,
Right.
and we put a big giant dead tree on the ground there so you can see, and there's a snag on one side, so you can see the tree fell down, created a hole, and these other things are growing up. And we can put some of the spring flowers in there and things like that, so that, well, I don't know, they don't really care about daylight when there's leaves out because they're not doing it anymore. But we'll have to create a couple of light gaps.
All right. That sounds awesome.
That would be great for Lori's narrative, interpretive narrative, right? On biotic and abiotic interaction too, to explain and highlight that theme. And I like the holes too, in the, like, what's the purpose of a dead log in a forest? To help communicate to the public that we need to leave those logs in the forest and not remove them, which was a policy. It was quite detrimental to the health of the forest. So providing homes for little, chipmunks and raccoons and food for woodpeckers and all of those stories.
Yeah.
As
places for
opposed to
salam-
raking the leaves in the forest. I'm sorry.
Well, fire management, we got to do that. Instead of fixing the cause, just clean up the mess. All right. So
All right.
human. Okay.
All right.
It looks
so
great,
that-
Chris. This is really fabulous work. I commend you on doing an excellent job. You've never
It is,
seen this
yeah,
plant.
it's-
So
Thank you.
Yeah, it's really good.
really good.
Thank
Just
you.
keep
I
going.
appreciate that. Alrighty. So for the laurel, do we have any other photos of references for one? Because the one that I was looking at was this one, which now that I'm kind of looking at it again, I can see it's much smaller, but it's got that.
It has a trunk. Yeah.
Yeah, didn't I
So-
send you a bunch of laurel pictures?
I think there was the video of the flowers, which is where I pulled my little flower texture from. But I think they were all they were kind of like little bushes, I think.
Yeah, they're
We should be able to get photos of that. It's commonly photographed.
Okay.
But you can see the photo that you have up there now, you can see the very dense branching.
Yeah.
And it's really crooked, and it doesn't really look like a tree, right?
and that's an
Right.
exceptionally large mountain laurel right there too. 'Cause
Yeah,
it
that
goes
specimen is
yeah.
probably 12 feet high. I know that tree, and usually that guy, I think in the years past, I think other people at Powder Mill pruned off the lower branches to make it look more like a tree.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Okay, that makes sense.
Hey guys, I need to run. I have a thesis defense. I need to just put a few minutes into prep. So I'm going to make Chris the host to this meeting and leave you to continue. Is that okay?
All right.
that
Sounds
works.
good.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, there you go. Chris, you're the host.
Alrighty.
I'm going to try to leave. And if you guys get disconnected, someone can just set up a new Zoom. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right.
All right. Take care, everyone. Great work.
Bye-bye,
Thank you
Maria.
again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Are we still good?
We're
Yep.
still good.
Awesome. So we will continue on then. So that's good to know that that one is exceptionally large and has been kind of chopped off at the bottom.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
little
so the
difficult.
other thing I wanted to say is that the crookedness is kind of typical. At the top of your tree, your branches are straighter than they usually
Right.
are. You see?
Right.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah, I
really,
see that
they
now.
do a lot of sort of dancing around with their branches.
All right. I will make a note of that as well. All right. Awesome.
I have to tell you, this is kind of fun because, you know, you don't really know what these things look like until you try to reproduce them. You know,
Yeah.
Yep.
Really get out and look at them.
Yep.
the great
Yeah, I love
Ernst
working on this stuff.
Haeckel, you know, Bonnie Ernst Haeckel, the great zoologist and developmental biologist, said that you don't know what you haven't seen what you haven't drawn, is what he said.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a good point. It is really eye-opening to have to build them from the ground up and see them like that. Alrighty. The next tree is the red oak.
I think the form is pretty good.
Okay.
When they get big, they won't have the lower branches because they lose those into the darkness. And it's
Okay,
just
so
the
these,
crown.
right. Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah. So that the thicker the forest, the less lower branches any tree will have.
Okay, that makes sense. Would you think we should
With the
have?
exception of the hemlock. That's the
Right.
only
Right.
one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Those keep their lower branches even in the middle of a
Forever.
forest?
Yeah.
Forever.
Wow. That's really cool. Would you recommend a version with lower branches and one without?
So
Or
if you're going to have different sizes, the saplings usually they have to make it. This is their critical time, and they often have more profuse branches compared to their height.
okay.
You know? So for a little oak, yeah, I think you would have lower branches,
Right.
and then as
Yeah.
they grow, fewer and fewer branches on the bottom. That's also true of the tulip poplar. By the time they're big, they have, you know, you can have 40 or 50 feet of straight trunk with nothing on it.
Right.
Wow. That's
But the
incredible.
little guys, they have to get as many leaves out as they can. So
Right. That makes a lot of sense. All right. So I'll definitely we'll have some kind of large or young to old models and see what we can do.
and of course, that's another one where I think this one looks okay, but that's another one where I think an artist is likely to make the bottom wider than it really is.
Okay, so yeah.
Yeah. No, that's as they get bigger though, the bark changes too. So
Which
the
is a
bark
real
needs-
annoyance in all kinds of ways. If you
Yeah.
see a really, really big tree, it doesn't have the bark that's in the textbook, you know.
What's different about it?
the plates are bigger and flatter.
Okay. So it's less.
In this particular one, that pattern that you have is really good for a mid-sized tree.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Small oaks will be quite smooth.
Yes.
And then the big oaks, what you have here, you see this sort of flat strip going up and down.
Yeah.
They'll be quite wide, and it'll look almost like it looks, I don't know, to me it almost looks like there's water running down the tree in places.
Wow. All right. So we may need to find some photos of.
Yeah, I think that's one where you have to have some photography models.
Yeah.
But the bark's not bad on that. I mean, it's just, you know.
No, right. That's a good bark for a, like you said, a medium-sized tree.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will make a note of that. All right.
I
But
love
the
shadows too.
oh,
I like
thank you.
the shadows. Good.
Yeah, the light coming through on these is really awesome. Let's see if I can find that. It is. Alrighty. The branching structure is good, and the overall shape.
Yeah, yeah.
I sent a couple of photos earlier. I don't think it said red oak, it said white oak, but both of them, when they're really big, when they're canopy trees, the branching appears to be fairly symmetrical in the sense that it kind of describes a hemisphere or something, you know, so you get
Right.
a dense crown that's very evenly and well supported. If you look in some of the photos I sent, so one of the things that's really good about this model that you have is that what you're developing at the top here, imagine this tree grows a little longer, what you drop out the lower branches and then you proliferate really small branches at the top, right?
Right.
And you'll generate a very dense crown that is supported rather evenly on, you know, some main branches. I think you've got that going on there. It looks pretty good.
Awesome. Awesome.
But as I say, as it gets bigger, the leaves are only at the top.
Right. Right. That'll be an easy change. So that's awesome. Alrighty. What is next? The next one is the red maple.
I think that's another one where it's too thick for the height.
Okay, that's good to know.
Although those are quite variable, you'd get away with that model, but I think it should be thinner. Also, that tree is one that would have grown up in the light or something. It had a hard life that snapped off its top or something. You don't see a single straight leader defining the tree.
Right.
So this model
Right.
is perfectly useful. You can use this one, but it's not
Okay.
typical.
Okay.
I think you want to have a structure that looks a little bit more like the oak you had in that it has sort of
Okay.
a strong dominant vertical. They do have more side branches like this, indeed.
And
Okay.
this one, it does look like you made the branches opposite.
I think the reference photo I had was a bunch of big red maples on the side of a street. So they probably
Yeah.
didn't have
And that would
the
make
exact
sense. It's
form.
a street-grown tree. Yeah.
Right.
Say forest, they would be a little more, like John said, single stem
Right.
branches.
You can
Not as
use that
strong.
model though. That's what they look like when the tops are snapped off and then they keep growing.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact,
Perfect.
people do that on purpose with city trees so that they make them have this round crown like this because people
Yeah.
think that's attractive.
Well, then we'll definitely use that, and I could have kind of a trunk sticking up that's snapped off as well. In
Yeah, that
there.
would work too.
Awesome. So I made notes about more vertical. And then these ones, I don't have them in yet, but do they have kind of branching roots at the bottom, or does it kind of just go down?
No, they do. That's okay what you've got there. That looks
Yeah.
pretty good.
Okay. Awesome.
We only have a couple of trees that actually develop any kind of buttress-like structure at the bottom, and they're usually quite large by the time that happens.
Yeah.
Um,
I remember
And-
seeing the, or go
And
ahead.
if you've got leaf litter all over the forest floor, it's going to cover up some of that.
That's true too. And we definitely will have that. Alrighty. What is next?
so let's look at this just for one more minute,
Okay.
Chris.
Alrighty.
So I said that the autumn version, the colorful version.
Yeah.
All right. So as a rule of thumb, what happens with the red maples, which, as I say, they can be all different colors simultaneously.
Yeah.
The trees that were in bright sun or they had some kind of heat stress, like the ones that are over the driveway or something, they turn
Right.
very dark red. And then as you move deeper away from the sun into the tree, they turn orange to, I'm sorry about that, I can't turn the phone off. They
No
turn
worries.
orange and then yellow, and in the interior, there'll still be a pale green sometimes, even when the outside ones are deep red. And an
Wow.
individual leaf can actually be all those colors at once. So we'll send you some photos, and the rule of thumb would be for something like this, you would pick one side of it, let's say, and you make, let's just say this right-hand side will be the reddest. And then as you
Right.
move across the tree, that deep red color begins to fade to orange and yellow. And then sort of at the lower far end, you'd have some leaves that still be greenish, that kind of thing.
That's really cool. And I would definitely love to have the model representing that. So I say we definitely do that. All right.
That's really one of our most spectacular trees because of this.
Color-wise, yeah.
Yeah, color-wise. They can be quite stunning. This particular year up here, we had a really good autumn, and some of these trees are the most beautiful trees I've ever seen, frankly. Absolutely.
That's incredible that they can do that.
There's a little bit of individualism too. We've got some trees in our yard that, you know, even though they're side by side, the one tree is always way more spectacular than the other. It's just absolutely brilliant red. Whereas
That's
the one
so cool.
beside it's the orange and yellow with some red. So,
That's really, really cool. Makes me jealous. These Florida trees don't seem to do that.
well, you've got things that we could be jealous of. So. It's a trade-off.
We don't
Yeah.
have any bromeliads, so.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Got some spectacular orchids down there too.
Mm-hmm.
Not that we don't have spectacular orchids, we do, but they're just way smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Bonnie, I found an area that has, I don't know, 1,000 spiranthes. It's just beautiful.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Just really something. And
there's a lot of work going on with spiranthes right now.
yeah, so one of those guys came out here to see our stuff, and anyway, we'll have that discussion a different time, but
Yeah.
seeing a little wetland that is just covered in orchids is quite beautiful.
Alrighty. Let's see what is next. Red maple. So the next one is the serviceberry.
Well, I like the bark on that. I think you got that right.
Yeah, that looks good.
Yeah. I think that this is pretty good. They have a lot of space in there as you've drawn them. So there's a lot of sort of empty space along the branches.
Okay.
This guy's quite asymmetrical. He's a perfectly good model, but I would say in general, they're a little more symmetrical, like that one big bottom branch there, giving it a lot
that
of
one
asymmetry.
bottom branch does seem to stick out a little weird, but
Okay.
But
it
you
can
know,
happen. It's not, you know.
right. If you said this was modeled from a photograph, I'd believe it. So
yeah, I did use a reference. I think I have it right here. Photoshop. It's somewhere, but it was a direct replication of an asymmetrical photograph. But I think I may have another version that's a little less asymmetrical. Actually, it's still got a big branch there as well.
It's got a couple big branches.
Mm-hmm.
Those lower branches just look a little too big in relation to the tree.
yeah, this is another tree that as it grows, so they never get very large, but as they increase in size, they tend to drop off their bottom branches. So it's unlikely you would see big ones like that. If you just moved them halfway up the stem, that'd look more realistic.
Yeah, right. Move them halfway up and shorten them just a little bit so that they're not overtopping.
Yeah, so you leave the leaves where they are and just connect that halfway up.
Okay, perfect. That actually will be a pretty easy change. I think I've got another. little version. Would a bend like this make sense?
Yeah, that happens.
Sure.
Okay.
It's
Actually, I like that in your work is that they don't look like Legos stuck together. I think it's good the way you've done that.
Awesome. But probably the same thing here where this branch is maybe a little large to be
Right.
that low. Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, just slide them up the trunk a bit and it'll look better.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Anything else on the surface barrier?
No, it looks good. Like
Awesome.
John said, you nailed the bark. It looks real good.
Awesome. Yeah, we had really good photos for that bark.
Well, you know, it's kind of important because at least for people who know what they're looking at, even if it isn't conscious, even if you're not conscious of what you should see, when you don't see it, then you notice it.
Right. Yep. Alrighty. Surfaceberry. The next one's the tulip tree, which I think you mentioned this is a little.
Right. Yeah, that's
Incorrect.
real atypical. It's
Yeah.
almost always just a single trunk.
You could use that model, but it would have to be a really big tree or something.
Right.
In general, as Bonnie says, it's a rocket straight trunk. That's another one that's too fat at the bottom.
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks a lot like a cypress. It's got
So
When they So
tapers.
I've been
too
watching
quick.
our trees around here. When the wind blows the top off them, that's when you get some kind of an anomalous big branch like that. They're
Okay.
trying to grow their tops back. So you could leave that model. We could use it someplace like near the clearing that we're going to have a big tree down. We could put that guy next to the clearing. But in general, these are just rocket straight trees that once they're really big, they don't have any branches on the side.
Okay, and then
The trunk will hold its thickness for a long ways up.
so less of a dramatic
Yes.
taper.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's basically undetectable usually.
Okay, that's
It's
really
very
good.
dramatic, and these things can be really, really big. I know we've got quite a few here that are well over 90 feet tall, and you
Wow.
wouldn't even get the first branches until you're up there, like, 60 feet or something.
Right.
So all these lower ones would just be off.
On. Yeah. Take them
So
on.
if you were to take that model and have it be a small one, of course, we want to get rid of that big fat branch. But if you want a small one that still has a few branches on the side, that could be, in which case we're saying that that tree is 15 feet tall,
Okay, that's good
right?
to know.
But by the time they're 50 feet tall, all the lower branches are gone. That tree really has to have a lot of light. And so if there isn't any light, they just get rid of that branch.
Okay, perfect. That makes a lot of sense too.
And that's one of my favorite species. It's one of the first ones in any light gap. They get going fast, they get going early, and they never quit. And for the entire life of the forest, they're right up in the top.
That's
It's an
awesome.
amazing species.
It's a pioneer species. The seeds won't even germinate unless they have light. They have to be in the open.
Wow.
So it'll start growing before the other trees start. So that it gets a head start. That's why it's always a lot bigger than the other stuff.
That's really
So the
cool.
bark is pretty good, but I sent a photo. Did I send a photo? I can't remember. Maybe I sent a photo. You know what expanded metal is, right? Where they punch holes in it and pull it
Yeah.
out. Yeah, okay. So the bark on this tree really looks like expanded metal, and the ridges are connected both above and below to their neighbors a little bit. And you've got that going on. I can see it in some places. You just
Yeah.
need to amplify that a little bit.
So
Actually, what we're looking at now looks really good.
Yeah.
I think it's because most of the kind of the ridges are generated with the normal map, so the actual model is flat, but when you look at it at kind of that forward angle, it gives you that impression.
No, I like it. It looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's
Awesome.
not bad.
Awesome.
And that's a very characteristic thing of that tree. The form of the bark.
Yeah.
I even like how you've got a couple of little scars in there. That's good too.
Mhm.
where there used to be a branch.
Yep.
Awesome. Alrighty, so definitely we'll chop off that large branch. Would there be any branches like this up top, or no to even that, just small ones?
They have to be pretty high up because they drop the branches that are running out of light. They just get rid of them.
Okay,
So a branch like that has to be pretty near the crown.
okay,
And that's awfully thick too for one of those.
right, right.
Yeah, to have branches like that, it would have to be a totally open grown, not in the forest.
Right. I think my reference for that one was also a street. I think, is this what I was looking at? I think that's the one.
Whoa. Yeah, those trees have had a hard life and that they got topped. You can see that the row on the left, they cut out the leading stem completely. And then the
Oh,
side
right.
branches became the crown.
Right. Yeah.
And
So
as I
that's
say, they do that because when the tree is short, then you generate this lollipop look that people
Right.
claim to like.
So that's totally kind of a manufactured look then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But keep that model because if we make a blowdown area, then we can put that right next to the blowdown and that would be realistic. Well, I'm saying we can probably use that model somewhere.
Yeah, I'll definitely save it. Alrighty. The next tree is the white oak.
Well, I think this is another one where that would be okay for a smaller tree.
Okay.
But if you look at the images that I sent a couple days ago, once again, by the time this tree gets really big, for the most part, all the leaves are way up at the tips, not much back
Right.
inside the tree.
And those
Now, this
smaller
is
lower
also-
branches wouldn't be there.
What's that?
Those smaller lower branches wouldn't be there.
Right, the smaller lower ones wouldn't be there, and those big ones would be naked until you get near the end.
Okay,
Right.
that's
You'd
really
have
good.
a dense,
So up in here, this wouldn't exist, this branch right here.
Right. Yeah.
the little ones, right. If you look at the images I sent, actually one of the really nice things about taking pictures right now is that you can see the structure of the tree because there are no leaves.
Right.
You can kind of imagine for these guys when they're really big, it's going to have a little bit of a resemblance to a broccoli where all the action is right at the very tips,
Okay. Yeah. Would this be another one where the trunk is a little thick in the model, a little too thick? Would it be a straighter?
Yeah, I think it's a little thick.
Okay.
But white oaks can be enormous when they're, in fact, often the top branches get snapped off in storms. And so they stop getting taller, but they keep getting wider.
That's really cool. Like broccoli. All right, so thin on the inside, more action on the ends of the branches, no lower branches. All right. And the bark's looking all right on this one?
Yeah, the bark looks good.
Yeah, that's good. It's a lot more flaky than the red oak.
Right. All right.
Yeah, you're good at bark, man.
These photos are perfect. It's really kind of easy to generate that bark material with awesome photos. Alrighty.
The white oak might be a place where you want to put in, even on the living
I need to
tree,
let my students in. I'll be right back.
Okay.
you might want to put a tree hole or something, a wound on the tree, because when they're dropping their lower branches, some of them don't heal properly.
Okay. So
Right?
on.
So you could imagine, I'm just making this up, but you see one of these lower branches that we have. So if you remove the branch and you put a kind of a welt or, so it's like a welt with a hole in the middle of it kind of thing.
Okay.
Because especially for the big white oaks, you commonly see those where the lower branches from many years past came off and
Right.
it didn't heal properly.
That would probably add a lot to the believability. So that sounds great. So probably right, like in a model like this, right about where this lower branch is.
Yeah, sure, something like that. And we can find some photos of that kind of a thing. You just
Okay.
want to make a small dome-shaped thing, and then it has a darkened thing in the center where it's still growing and hasn't healed properly, and
Right.
you know.
I wonder if I have a photo of. No. Alrighty. I think, is that the last tree? White oak. I guess that is all of the trees that I have. I think the only one that we don't have a model for yet is the black cherry. I think we still need some more photos for that one.
Okay, so I sent a couple, whenever that
Yeah.
was, a few days ago.
Let me check.
I sent a few photos. Cherries, the black cherry grows really fast. And most of these trees that grow fast are just going up, 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 just like the tulip poplar. But
Right.
cherries often will have a fork in them. And the photo I showed you earlier, where there's a living tree, but it has a big dead piece to it, half snag, half
Yeah.
wood, that's a cherry.
Okay.
Cherries,
That's
they
good.
grow really fast, and they're bent, so they like to go straight, but I don't know what it is about them. I don't know, they get insulted somehow, and they're a little bit crooked, a little bit crooked. It's actually a source of great frustration to foresters. Pennsylvania produces the highest quality cherries in the world, and a big cherry that is straight and even is worth $1,000.
Yeah.
But if it's
Wow.
crooked, it's worth almost nothing. And so it drives them crazy that cherries will go crooked on them.
That's awesome. So I'm trying to find those photos. It was the Dropbox, right? The trees for Maria.
I don't know what you're referring to.
Yeah, that's
Um,
the Dropbox where John put some photos yesterday.
For
The
some
tree
reason, I
for
can't
Maria.
seem to get in there. I'm sure maybe it's an access thing with Maria.
Well, if I
But
can
I'll-
share my screen, I can probably find them pronto.
Okay.
You want to look at the cherries?
Yeah, that would be awesome, just to kind of get an idea.
Okay. So so I share my screen, right? Stop sharing. You're viewing Chris's screen.
Maybe if I...
Okay. All right. Do you see my hand on a tree?
Yep.
That's typical cherry bark.
Yeah. And I put my hand on there to show you the scale, right?
Okay.
And it's real flaky. Oh, did I do this the wrong way? I might have to start this again. I want to be able to. All right. Tell me if it changes. Did it change?
No,
Nope.
Yeah. Okay. So
you're just share on that one.
New share. All right, try this. Is my hand?
There we go.
gone?
There we go.
Yep.
Okay.
Hand is gone. Yeah.
All right. So those are the flakes.
That's a
They're
beautiful
really
picture.
three-dimensional, right? You get a lot of shadow under them.
Mm-hmm. That's very
Okay,
cool.
so now we're looking up from the base, and you'll see that even though they're growing rather straight, most of them do have some kind of branching up there, but they're still quite vertical, right? They're not very horizontal at all, still reaching to the
Right.
sky. Okay, so there's one. The one in the dead center, actually you can
Right.
see it's crooked. That's a real thing. A lot of them have bends in them. That's what drives the foresters crazy. In 60 years, this tree will be worth $0 instead of $1,000. This is one that's actually losing its crown, but you see the same thing, that it's very straight at the bottom, and when you get I don't know, let's say a little more than halfway to the crown, then you see the forks.
Right.
Just to the left of center, you can see it well in that one. You
Mhm.
start getting the forks. Of course, they were doing this when they were younger, but they dropped their other branches.
Right.
Here's one that kept its fork when it was much younger, right?
Hmm.
I think that's all I have on that.
Those are super useful, though. That's awesome.
And this bark is really very typical. There are several different kinds of cherries, like the blooming cherries that people like in Washington. It has a very smooth bark with little sideways lines in it. And
Hmm.
that's what people expect because that's what they plant in their yard.
Right.
This is a different tree.
Right.
Yeah. All right. That's awesome. So I think that is that's about where we're at. Um, I'll definitely start making those changes, and then once all of the models are looking good and we have some variations, I'll create some of those snags as well, and those photos will be super helpful for that. But yeah, I think that's about it.
All right, super. I'll look over that spreadsheet you guys sent and
That would be awesome.
notes
Thank
on
you.
there and get you some dogwood bark pictures and some dogwood pictures.
Sounds perfect.
Maybe I'll even call home and see if I can get the spousal unit to take them today so you can get them.
Awesome.
All right.
Well,
Nice to do business with you again, Chris.
yeah, it's great to hear from you. It's awesome, and this was super helpful. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, we do too.
Yeah, kind of fun.
It's super fun. I really love working on this stuff.
All right, very good. I'll put the snags in the trees for Maria file too, and I'll have a little text that tells you what you're supposed to notice from the photo.
That sounds perfect. Thanks, John.
All right.
Okay.
All right, and thanks, Bonnie.
Yep. Thanks, Chris.
All right.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.